Live.
Cool.
Yeah, I think we're live.
Cool.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hello.
Hello.
good.
Awesome.
So
Yeah, really well. Hope you're well. Thanks for.
Tom, I think you're a bit delayed now, mate.
Oh my days.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We were just talking about delays before coming on, so people watching. So if there's a bit of stuttering and delay, do excuse us. And yeah, thanks for Harry and Tom from Modern Rituals for joining today. And we're going to talk a bit around obviously the new tracks that have come out today, and hopefully around their top gigs played and been to as well. So yeah, thanks guys. So how have you both been? How's lockdown been treating you, and what you've been doing to keep busy?
I'll let Tom go first in case there's delay. There he is.
So yeah, I've been well, thanks. Lockdown has been very strange. So yeah, my job is co-running a recording studio in South London called the Book House with my friend Ian Hansen. And yeah, we just haven't had clients in for a few months, so it's been strange adjusting and strange trying to get work in. But luckily, I've had loads of mixing stuff, and it's been pretty fun. So yeah, I'm healthy. People close to me are healthy, so it's not too bad. Yeah. How about you, Harry?
Yeah, similarly, I've been okay. My work's continued, so that's been fine. But I've had a lot of time to focus on actually doing a lot more music on my own, and that's been good. I think I've written a lot of music over this time, which has been a sort of nice opportunity from my side. And as Tom said, I've not had any close relatives or friends fall ill or anything. So I can't really complain about anything at the moment. But that's what I've been up to.
Nice. So you say you've been writing a bit of music. Is that some solo stuff or more Modern Rituals potentially?
It's been Modern Ritual stuff because we've sort of been playing around with new ways of writing, and actually experimenting with these methods, sort of doing things remotely, has really taught us things I think we'll probably take forward with us. So we're writing, but I think it's probably going to go towards some kind of lengthy new thing. We thought an EP, but it might be a bit longer. So currently everyone's doing their parts gradually, and it's been quite fun actually in that respect to learn these new ways of writing like that. So
it's interesting you say that, because a lot of the people I know in bands have really had to adapt and evolve. I think I mentioned it on the last time I was on, but like John, for example, from John Newton from John, he's a drummer and vocalist by trade, and he's just ended up writing 2 like electronic singles, and they sound fantastic. And he was talking about that the other day, about having to sort of adapt and evolve in these times. So yeah, it's really wicked to hear you guys are still writing. So yeah, before we dive into what you released today, the 2 songs, I wanted to ask around your influences as Modern Rituals and as individuals, because to be honest, I find it really hard to pinpoint Modern Rituals sound. You're not a hardcore band. You're not a noise band. You're not this. You're not that. So yeah, I just really want to know what your influences and drives were behind the band.
Well, Tom, did you want to go for that one first before me?
I feel like, yeah. So I think I don't want to speak for Harry, and I won't speak for Harry, but my interpretation of it. Because Harry is the main songwriter. He has the initial ideas which he presents to us, and we work from there. He has loads of influences, and then I think everything gets slightly melded and like changed by the 3 rest of us. So I'm not really sure I can speak for the other 2 guys, Jake and Bob, but I've basically just grown up listening to like all music that has guitars. So when I was younger, loads of like heavy stuff, into like rock and like metal, and then in the more recent years, if anything, I listen to more sort of like Americana and American country music than other stuff, really. But I think the defining thing is I just listen to a lot of emo bands that Harry probably finds completely unbearable.
No,
so I try and get some of that in there, but yeah. But But I think the influences are mainly Harry's ones, and I think especially on the new record, some of the more dissonant stuff found its way in.
Yeah, I'd say the reason why things tend to vary a lot and why we probably don't have a particularly concrete sound, which I think we're all quite happy with. I think it probably is because each time we do go for a new release, I think each one kind of has its own sort of stance. It's sort of like the take on it tends to vary. And I think influences range definitely amongst each member. Like I know that Jake's taste in music, I found it really interesting learning Jake's taste in music over the years, and I know that his and Rob's cross over in many ways, but I know they each also have their own sides. And like Tom said about things like emo, for example, I know that Rob and Tom are much more keen on that than myself or Jake are. But I think we've always respected each other's taste in music, and other things too. I think aesthetics also, there's influences there that come in. I wouldn't say it's just music. I think trying to convey moods and certain concepts, I suppose you can find that across different platforms as well. Yeah, it's kind of hard to pinpoint influences. But all I wanted to say was when it began, like when this whole thing began, it was me and Jake. I think it was going to be an indie band. I think it was vague, but it was going to be a sort of Dinosaur Jr. style indie band. I know that Chris Wallard had a big impact at the beginning. That's changed a lot, which is fine. But it's tricky. It's tricky to sort of pinpoint any influences on how it is now. If that makes sense.
Yeah, but that's really cool to hear, and I suppose that's one of the reasons probably why Holy Roar picked you up as well, because you look at other bands on Holy Roar right now, like Elephant Tree, AA Williams, etc., etc. We can reel off so many bands. A lot of those bands, especially like Elephant Tree is a good example, you can't really pinpoint them. You can't call them a sludge stoner band. You can't call them another style, because, and I bet if I interviewed that band, they would probably say a similar thing. They probably all the band members have different influences over the years. So that's really nice to hear as well.
Yeah,
I know. So yeah, sorry, go on.
I was just going to agree with the thing on Holy Roar recently. That I was looking at the roster actually the other day and just thinking the same thing. Just Elephant Tree have had a recent release, and Antitheek, is that how you pronounce it?
Oh yeah.
So that's all I was going to say. Sorry, Karen.
No, that's all right. Yeah, I was just going to say, like, especially with the new songs, which we'll talk about in a second. Like, I pick up like Trail of the Dead, like Pile, Melvins from your music, and even though you could probably sort of put those in a box, you can't at the same time, because you say Pile and Trail of Dead and Melvins, even those bands you can break down into about 40 different genres. So it's really cool to hear. So yeah, moving on to the new songs. So you released Thick Wall and Remark is in order today, and I've listened to them on repeat this morning, and they're both fantastic guys. So
thank you. Cheers.
Really great work. And yeah, it's really good that you've released them, because they are fantastic songs. So I just wanted to know why they were sort of like left off the album, what was the thinking behind that, and obviously what you guys think of those two songs up against the rest of the tracks you released.
Tom, do you want to go in on this?
Yeah, so from my perspective, being the person receiving these like ideas from Harry and sort of hearing how they developed, Thick Wall is one that we actually released a really, really lo-fi version of on the EP that came out last year. It was just Harry and Ruben, the violin player who plays a lot of the stuff on This Is the History. His band is called Talons. They just played in a rehearsal room, and I just set up a few mics and recorded it. And that was kind of like almost like a demo version of it that was always intended on being at some point fleshed out. So the version that got released today is the fully formed version of it, how it was always intended to sound. And I think it came out great. I think it worked really well. We still tracked the drums, bass, and Harry's guitar live. Most of my parts on the song are more ambient, so I just did everything afterwards. But yeah, I think it came out really well. A Remark is in Order was one that during the album writing process changed a lot. Like I remember there being one practice where we came in and it was just like, I don't think it was restructuring it, but like the chord progression that carries the outro of the song changed, and it took some getting used to and like figuring out the mood of the song. And basically my initial like perceptions of the song completely changed, and I think it's come out really well, but that was, to me, was harder work, but still like equally rewarding. And it's got Tom from Harry's other band Sands playing additional guitar parts on it, which had quite a lot. They had quite a lot of like bounce and I don't know, just like more interesting texture than if it had just been us playing in a room.
Yeah,
I think on that note, just on a remark as an order, that was that did go through these changes, but that both songs are have got something in common in the sense that they were both songs that I developed a lot with other people, non-Modern Rituals members in Bristol. For example, with a remark to start off with, that Tom Dammit Rudd, as you just said, that began with me and Tom Dammit Rudd playing as a sort of side thing. We were just messing around with the drum machine, and that was kind of why I think the perception of it got driven into Modern Rituals, because I felt there was a lot to keep from that manifestation of it. And that's why it's got that driving drum machine going underneath, because it was originally played with that. And that's why in the end, I think, given how it came out with Modern Rituals, all the room was still there for Tom Dammit Rudd to still have his parts in it. I just thought, I love those parts, so why not keep them? And yeah, so I think it took shape in a very different way to the other songs. It wasn't, both of them, Thick Wall as well, because it was something I'd played more with Ruben, just with the violin. Again, for that reason, they were both outliers in the sense that they were developed very differently to the other songs that are on the album. And on top of that, I think just the way that they sound is, they're much softer songs, and therefore, just in that respect, I thought they didn't really belong on the album. Well, we decided it took a lot of deciding anyway.
Yeah.
I think
go on, Tom. Sorry.
All I was going to say is that I think the other thing to mention, that part of the reason why they didn't go on the album was purely the practical element that the vinyl was limited to however many minutes, like 22 minutes per side. So we had to cut a couple of songs. So it wasn't that we really wanted to get rid of them. We weren't like, no, they're not good enough. There was quite a lot of discussion that went into it, and for quite a long time they were both contenders for the album. But ultimately they did just stand out as being the outliers that would be more suited to like another release. But the a remark is in order for all of the people, and when I say all of the people, I mean probably like 2 people that bought a CD of the album as opposed to the vinyl. A remark is in order is actually a hidden track at the end of the CD. Nice. So it's sort of been out for a while, but that's probably not the most useful thing to say to promote it today. But,
Harry, you definitely hit the nail on the head. When I listened to those 2 songs today, the things that you've said to analyze them, like the softer songs, they're outliers. You can definitely hear that, and I definitely think from a fan's perspective, I couldn't see them on the album, but not in a bad way. Like you were saying, you could see them as their own standout release, and actually the 2 tracks really work well together as just that 2-track release. So, and like I said, I'm glad you released them, but it kind of makes sense, like what you're saying. You've had one of them started out a completely different beast almost, and with that electronic drum machine, you can hear that it's almost like an outside influence outside of Modern Rituals. So kind of all makes sense. Talking about building the beast of an album. So Tom, obviously you were behind the mixing desk for this second album. So how, in regards to process, do you guys find that actually having someone in the band recording you rather than having that outside influence? And obviously we were talking before, you much prefer making albums rather than EPs. So just talk a bit around that whole process of making the album, I suppose.
Tom, would you mind if I jumped in quick before?
I was going to say, if you speak first about how it works for you, I'll try and tie it up at the end. But go for it. Because
I know this is a question more for Tom, but with just from our perspective as Modern Rituals, because Tom's the most recent member, he joined a couple of years ago, and we've obviously had experience recording with other people before, and I just think that for us it made such a huge enormous difference to be able to have a member of the band doing it, and the fact that all of us could engage much more with every aspect of the outcome of it. I just think the change there was really dramatic for us, because I think it did enable us to really pay attention to every minute detail. And Tom's know-how, we all really like the way that Tom produces music, and I think we all therefore had a lot of faith in a lot to do with it. I remember at the beginning, Tom being in his new studio, being like, oh, I can get this drum sound by having a mic out in this bit, and all these ideas were immediately starting to sort of flow. So just from my perspective, not being the producer, and my perspective being in Modern Rituals before Tom, I'd say that it had a really dramatic impact, and it gave, I think, actually all of us a bit more of a voice on the outcome of that record in various ways, which I think was also incredibly important. But yeah, that was what I wanted to say.
Yeah, I think that pretty well covers it. When we were writing a lot of these songs, I think part of what informed how they were going to sound was just like a continuous demo process. So whether it was we did a couple of times demoing in London, but also there were times where we would just set up a few mics, literally one mic over the drum kit, nothing fancy, not demos that sounded great, just demos where, like, rather than just using an iPhone where everything sounds like a mush, it was just everything well separated, so we could actually figure out parts where, like, perhaps the bass and drums weren't quite locking in, or just any small mistakes or any small things that could have been better, all got ironed out sort of in the writing process just really clearly. I think some of the songs we even demoed like maybe even as many as like 4 times. So we recorded the album really, really quickly, and I think it was 2 days to do the basic tracking, and then maybe 3 days of us doing overdubs, and maybe 1 or 2 days worth of Harry recording some of the overdubs in Bristol, like some of the strings and stuff with Ruben. So like the recording process is pretty quick, but it was like heavily informed by the preparation.
Yeah.
And I think like, so the last record, the last album, I should say, was recorded by Lewis Johns in Southampton, and I really like everything he does. And I think that record sounded really good, but just the only real difference we wanted with this one was just to make it like as natural as possible. And I think for the most part we did. I think like a couple of songs like Harry on Still in Flesh, did we do like any overdubs, or was it just vocals?
No, I think you're right. I think there was no overdubs. I think
yeah. So yeah, I think most of the songs are pretty pretty much like just the band playing live with some other stuff. So there's loads of weird percussion, like Jake hitting additional drums. On the weirder songs on the album, like Passageway and like Convulsor, there's lots of weird percussion of like nunchucks being rattled and hitting on metal boxes and like rubbing old drum skins together. Anything that we thought.
It sounds like Queens of the Stone Age always do in the studio. They just find whatever they can. Put an amp down a toilet or something.
Yeah. I think there was just like a really fun element of that, of us just messing around, but they all like contributed to create either what was intended to be the heaviest, most like crazy bits of the record, or like the weirdest, most uncomfortable sounding parts of the record. But I think it was good. I think, as Harry said, everyone had their say. So we worked on the backing vocals a lot before doing the actual recording. We worked on where we would want some additional keyboards that Jake for the most part played. I think just me, it was less my influence, but more that everyone was constantly talking to me in the process leading up to actually doing the real recording that kind of made the difference in how it was going to sound, because it was very very open process, really.
Yes. So because obviously you guys are split between Bristol and London, you're talking around sort of like the demoing and writing process leading up to it, which sounds like a longer process, like you were saying, before you actually get into the studio and put it down finally. Do you guys spend a lot of time actually in a practice room together thrashing out ideas, or is it more back and forth sending each other demos between Bristol and London?
I think sorry.
Yeah. I was just going to say this, with the, the pandemic, the lockdown, this is the first time with the new songs we're writing at the moment that we've ever done online collaboration. It's always been practice room based. But yeah, what were you going to say, Harry?
Yeah, well, what's leading on from that, I suppose for me, my comparison point is having the band I'm in Bristol, Sands, and we're very much we don't do anything outside of the practice room. So yeah, to Tom's right in terms of the extremity of our use of online, using Dropbox to send stems and stuff like that. This is the first time we've done that, and actually we're really profiting off being able to work on parts alone. I think I know Rob in particular was saying that. But yeah, it was for This Is the History. It was phone recordings of songs, making it much more vague, but also much more open to interpretation. And then really fleshed out in the practice room. But yeah, so a lot more traveling for that, and hopefully less for the next one.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. No, that's really awesome to hear, guys. It's really interesting to hear how you've built that album, and yeah, it's definitely one of my most played albums at the moment. And yeah, I'll be smashing out those two songs a lot. So yeah, moving on to the last bit and the most fun part of the podcast. Talk around like your favorite gigs ever played. Hopefully you guys have made a list.
I got a list.
So talk a bit around that. What are your favorite shows, either in Modern Rituals or other bands?
Tom, I'm really curious as to yours.
Well, I'm probably the most forgetful person ever. So mine are the best gigs that we've played that I can easily remember and recall. Because there might have been some that were absolute blinders that I've just completely forgotten about because I'm useless. But the ones that come to mind immediately are, and I've kind of cheated with two of these.
Okay, that's fine. I'll let you.
The first answer is a couple of the shows, probably most notably the maybe the Brighton show that we did on our tour of Holding Patterns last year. It was before they'd put out their album, so they were just playing songs that nobody knew. But within like one or two nights of that tour, like we were sort of like singing along and like really into it. They're just like really nice dudes. But yeah, the Brighton show was at the Green Door Store, which is one of our probably one of our
it's definitely
UK venues.
Definitely one of ours, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, love that place.
And really good venue. The sound was really good. It was busy. The actual lineup was really good. A friend's band called I Feel Fine were playing. They played really well. As far as I remember, they played a new song, and I just remember being like well excited to hear it. And like, it was just really good. It was just like the last day of a overall quite a successful, fun tour. And it was just great. So I had that down as like number 3. And then my second cheating answer is both of the shows that we did with an American band called Karl Marx.
Oh, nice.
I think Harry had quite a big part to play in like convincing them to do the shows, and so they came over from the States with not any clear expectations of how it was going to be, whether they'd get well attended gigs or anything. But both of them, one was the London show at DIY Space for London, and the Bristol show that we also played with them. Was that at High Brazil, Harry?
Yes, the old which is now gone. Yeah, the old High Brazil.
Yeah, High Brazil was a bit of a. Was it when you go in and you go down to the left and the stage is sort of down? I remember going to Dot to Dot Festival a couple of years ago, and Eka Vandal. I don't know if you guys have heard Eka Vandal were playing it in there, and I'd never been there before, and I sort of walked in and I was like, basically feels like a club.
It used to be a club called Start the Bus, like years ago, and I preferred that form of it. I think a lot of people did, but I've seen some pretty cool shows there. But the one thing I think it lacked, especially for our gig, was just the sound quality. I think it's just the shape of the room. That was the only unfortunate thing about that place. But it's now an O'Neill's, so now they just play football and serve beer and burgers. So yeah,
Oh shit!
It was better.
Yeah, now you can go and watch a function band play the Fratellis there every Friday night, I imagine.
So
anyway,
yeah,
Oh.
yeah. How did you manage to get those guys over from America then? What was your sell to them?
Well, they were interested to come over. We'd been in it was like a couple of years of like dialogue, and they were very keen to do it. But they're a band of a certain size, playing a certain style of music, and as we all know, it's very difficult to sort of cross continents to tour. So I think for them, they were being very rightfully cautious, I'd say, because all their concerns were completely valid. And it could be quite easy to be on the other side of that and just rush ahead and do it and completely screw yourselves over. So yeah, like I think that it was necessary, but they were keen to do it and they did do it. And I think completely fair play to them. They had a really good experience doing it. They ended up not completely bankrupt, and they did have some pretty good shows. I think the London show particularly on that run was really, really good for them. Like they had an incredible response, and it was actually just a really nice. It felt like a huge achievement for all of us, I think, because it had taken so long to get that going, and they were really happy. And yeah, it was a really good experience. That was
nice. So Harry, do you want to talk around your top gigs played then, mate?
Well, Tom, did we get your number one, or was that were those
no,
2 and 1?
I mean, so my that was part of my cheating. Yeah, they sort of blurred into one for me because I couldn't really choose between them. And then number one was just very shortly after I joined the band, we played Arctangent Festival, which is a festival I'd been going to, every year. It's cancelled this year, obviously, due to the pandemic. But aside from that, I've been maybe like 5 years in a row. I've lost track now. But we played so we were the first band on. I can't remember the name of the stage. I'm useless. Like I said, very forgetful. But we played one of the smaller stages that's right next to the main stage. So when we sort of came out, there were like a bunch of people there. And we played the first song, but as we were playing the first song, the band on the main stage finished, and loads of people just walked across. So we went from looking out on like a handful of people to just looking out on like a packed out tent. And the set went really well, and it was my first time playing with everybody, and we didn't mess anything up. And yeah, it was just great. It was just cool. Really good start to the day, and I had really great time the rest of that festival.
Yeah, so Arctangent's amazing. It's my favourite festival. I think I've been every year except the first 2 years. So I don't know if that's 5 or 6 years I've been, but I love those moments. I've seen that a lot actually, where especially with the way they've got it laid out now. So they've got the 2 stages over one side, the 2 stages over the other. And when that bigger band finishes and people are like, oh, I don't know where to go, and they just flood the smaller tent. The amount of times I've been stood watching with like 30 people, and you turn around, there's like 200 people there. You're like, fucking hell. I love those moments.
Yeah, Tom, I was super stoked for you that day because that was Tom's first show for us, and I think that's a pretty hard thing to do. So good work there, mate. Sorry, I was just going to say that's interesting you brought those up because you'd saying you're forgetful. I literally couldn't think because I was just trying to think back to all the gigs, and I forgot the Holding Patterns tour. I forgot the Cal Marks show. So but sorry, my number 3 was pre-Tom, but that was playing with Pile at the 100 Club in late 2016, because that was with a good friend, a good group of friends of ours called who were in a band called Brunch, and early Modern Rituals days was really a lot of our shows and touring was with Brunch, and we've become very close. And Pile were touring, and basically both Modern Rituals and Brunch were added to the show. It was the first time we'd played anything, with a band that we really, really liked, and all of us really liked a lot. And that's it. It's the only one pre-Tom I've got, but that was a really good experience for us, because yeah, we just hadn't had that before. So yeah, we loved that one.
Who was playing guitar on that one?
Adrian from Brunch.
It was Lid, yeah.
Yeah, so Lid got to do 2 gigs at the Pile show. But yeah, he smashed it. It was, and yeah, Adrian's someone who he's called Lid because he gave someone a pen bat without the lid.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's the in joke there?
Yeah, very in. But yeah, you know, we went to Lid's wedding last year, and yeah, we felt like, yeah. So playing with Brunch has always been one of our favourite things collectively.
Nice.
But the other one I was going to say was Cassell's, because Tom, I noticed you didn't bring up any of the Cassell shows.
Yeah.
But
Oh, they were the ones I found hardest to remember. That was actually a fairly recent tour. That was at the tail end of last year. But I just can't distinguish from what day was what. The only part of that tour I remember is where we did the gig, and I can't even remember what city, and there was just an old man stood at the front dancing
Hamburg.
the whole way through the set.
Yeah, that was Hamburg,
that's
and
like
Hamburg.
So that's like the only one that I could distinctly remember from that. Apart from maybe, and again, I don't remember what city it was, one of the Italian shows.
Milan.
Yeah, and where the guys from Dags kind of sorted it and put us up.
Yeah, that's my
yeah, and that was just incredibly late. But yeah, that tour was great fun for many reasons, but it was all too much of a blur for me to like pick a individual moment from it.
Yeah, I love
Harry. Go on. Sorry.
I love the Cassell's boys, but I'd try and forget that tour as well. There, they won't mind me saying that.
Well, were you supposed to come along or something?
No. I'm just ripping into them because they love being ribbed. So and I love this. Yes. Sorry, Harry. Go on.
So I was going to pick the first show from that tour because I find touring very stressful because I lose my voice all the time. So the first show was at Victoria in London, another very important venue for us. Yeah,
you were playing the same night as Saint Pierre.
Yeah,
we're playing at the Black Ark because I was going to come along to that show.
Oh right, oh cool.
Yeah.
The Victoria's just always been really you know, we've done a lot of shows there, and Rob's always lived in Hackney, and I think he's always brought a good draw along, and we've always ended up with a nice full room and they're free entry, and they sort of let you do your thing. They always provide a sound person who always does a good job. So it's a nice, reliable venue where you can sort of control the show, and you know, you can walk away with 200 quid from the door, from the bar, sorry, which is a great way to start a tour. So I couldn't pick a Victoria show, so I picked that one
nice.
Because I remember that being great. And I've sort of gone, I don't know, I haven't really done this in any order. These are my 3. My last one was the last gig that we played, which was in February this year. Because another venue I've got to mention is the Exchange in Bristol, because we played an all-dayer, and that show was fairly well attended. It wasn't like a packed room, but for me, it was just the best that we've ever played. Like, I just remember thinking that I just felt like it was just a perfect set for us, and I think the energy was there, and so I think that's my 3.
Was that all day in Bristol the Sugar Horse one?
Yes.
Yeah. I remember seeing that lineup crop up, and I was very jealous not to come down for that one. It was about 8 or 9 bands playing, wasn't it? So
yeah, it was a busy one. They were sort of rotating between the upstairs and the downstairs. I mean, the upstairs room, it sounds significantly better. It is the sort of original live room in that place. But I love playing that venue. It's just one of the good ones for me. So that was great.
Defo. So Tom, top 3 gigs been to as a fan then? I'll be interested to hear.
So this
Harry's already laughing, so
I'm just thinking status quo.
Yeah, well, Status Quo was the first gig I ever went to, but unfortunately it didn't make the list. So there you go. So I've got 3, and I couldn't really decide the order of them. But when I got into the Scary Monsters bands when I was about 16, purely through finding them on MySpace. I just remember trawling MySpace acting as my band and adding other bands, because that's just what you do. And just coming across that music, and through that I just found all of that stuff. Found Holy Raw, like Tangled Talk still existed at the time, like all these other like small labels like Alcopop and whatever, as they, you know, came into my life. I just got obsessed with that, and for a couple of years was just listening to loads of that stuff. So when I could, I went to shows when I was 16 and 17, but I remember loads of the gig posters and whatever being like, this show is 18 plus, and just being like endlessly frustrated. I couldn't go to any of them. So there was a gig a few days after I turned 18 that I went to, and it was quite an awkward setup actually, because the person driving us was my college girlfriend who I had broken up with a few days before, but we were like trying to stay on good terms. And we had already got the tickets and it was already arranged. She was going to drive me and my other friend. So we all just jumped in a car, drove to Kingston, having never been there before, and got lost trying to find the venue. And it was just like a slightly awkward air in the car. Everything was just kind of not great. But the second we got to the venue and the second we started watching bands, it was just, I stopped caring that the whole situation was kind of crappy and was just like, this is so good. And we watched stuff like G did, Tangled Hair and Shoes and Socks Off. And it was when Toby had just put out the Robin Hood Waiter Champion album, which is where it's kind of lots of full band, and he had a full band with him. It might even have been Ruben, actually. I'm not sure. I can't remember who was playing violin for him, Harry.
Very likely.
It was like two people on violin, someone on bass, someone on drums. So I just remember just being like absolutely floored by the Shoes and Socks Off live set. It was just so good. And then, yeah, as soon as the gig was over, awkward, horrible atmosphere sort of resumed. My ex-girlfriend and my mate. But the gig was great. So that was that. The other one of the other two that I've got on my list as favorite gigs ever. There's a American kind of like Americana country act, which is mostly one guy called MC Taylor. And the like band is called His Golden Messenger. And they've got like a huge back catalogue at this point of like, I don't even know how many albums, like 8, 9, something like that. And two of my friends, Harry Phillips and Simon Treasure, were just like, oh, our mate bailed, got a spare ticket, do you want to come? I knew nothing about it. It was at the Village Underground in London, which is like beautiful, insanely high ceilings,
great venue.
Walls. Yeah, and I didn't know any of the songs. I didn't really even know what kind of music it was. I just sort of said yes an hour or two before and showed up. And like the second they started playing, I was just like, this is like one of my new favorite bands ever. And just like immediately loved it, and just sort of was super attentive, and it was just like really good crowd, people singing along at all the right places, not being obnoxious and talking the whole way through. It was just so good.
Talking about sorry Tom, quick. We were talking about Black Midi before we jumped on the call, and I remember really good memory of Village Underground. I can't remember who they were supporting now. That's really going to bug me. But I remember same thing. Me and my mate went in, and I was like, "Who the fuck is this band?" Looked them up afterwards, and it was like, "Oh, it's Black Midi." And this was like 3 years ago, and obviously they've blown up now, and it's just like, oh yeah, I remember seeing Black Midi before they became famous, kind of thing. But yeah, that's a great venue as well. So they don't see enough shows there, which is a shame. But I know they've Village Underground is now also partnered with Earth as well, which is that newish venue in Stoke Newington area. So hopefully we'll see more. Hopefully we'll see more shows there. Sorry, Tom, go on.
Hope so. Yeah, that's when live music finally resumes. But yeah, my last answer, predictably, as with my favorite gigs that we've played, is somewhat of a cheating answer because it's just Arctangent 2016. It was just like dream lineup type stuff, just bands that I really love. A lot of the ones that I love that I have loved for like 10 years. So like This Town Needs Guns, Meet Me in St. Louis. American Football played that year, and like American Football were one of those bands that I, like everybody else, really got into the first record through the internet, and then when they actually did reform, I was just like, this is mad. So that was good. And like Mike Kinsella did an Owen set, La Dispute played Me Without You, just like a whole weekend with like a lot of my friends went that year. There was maybe like 10 or 12 of us in total. And it was like relatively good weather, which for that festival is a rarity. And yeah, it was just a really, really good weekend. Had a beer in my hand most of the time without going insanely, off it or whatever.
Drunk. Yeah.
It was just really good. Like the whole weekend was just so good.
It's funny.
Yeah,
it's funny you say about that year's Arctangent lineup. I can definitely see the different music tastes from me to you, Tom, because that year I remember not being that fussed about going to see like American football and Meet Me in St. Louis, and I was I'm more on the heavier side of Arctangent. But yeah, that year, if you like that sort of more indie emo kind of thing, that was an insane year for that. Cool. Harry, your top three, my friend.
I think the other band that played that year that really amazed me. Well, I'm sorry, I'm lagging.
Sorry, go on, Tom.
I was just briefly going to say the other band that played that year that completely floored me was Toe from Japan, and I remember finding it hilarious them sound checking because they clearly are not particularly fluent in English and didn't have a translator there on stage. So there was a lot of like pointing and waving, like this up, this down. And it took them ages to get going. But then the second they did, like the musicianship was just like floored me. Yeah, blew my mind.
Yeah, nice one.
Yeah.
I'm going to go from big to small, but I've got to start with the first gig I ever attended, which was my dad used to drive me and my mates from home up to London occasionally for gigs, which was amazing of him because we were little shits, and he had to sit in a car with us driving through London. So we saw a lot of good, bands of the time, early 2000s. We were into stuff like Taking Back Sunday, but the Movie Life put out an album in 2003 called 40 Hour Train Back to Penn, and I mean that song Jamestown, I still think it's
that's a bangers album. Brilliant album.
Yeah, and I got very, very into that, and then we saw that they were touring, so you buy Rock Sound or whatever and you'd see the tour posters there. So my dad took us out. It was the Mean Fiddler, if you remember that.
R.I.P.
Yeah, exactly, because that went down when the Olympics happened or something, right?
They tore it down 5 years ago, whenever it was. 5-6 years ago, and the Astoria. And many.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, many. I always talk about the Mean Fiddler because like the amount of insane shows I saw in there. Talking of emo, I saw My Chemical Romance in there, supported by Death from Above and Your Codename is Milo.
Yeah. Wow.
That was an insane show. That was like 2004. And coincidentally, obviously your friend Ruben, but I saw the band Ruben in there do a show that they did for the DVD and stuff. So yeah, many great memories. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
No. Honestly, that was my only experience of that venue. Because if I attended a gig in London, it would be a sort of one-off, get driven up with my dad and go with a couple of mates from home. That's the only time I went, and I've still got the vision of the venue layout is just imprinted in my memory. Because I remember my friend had broken his finger. For some reason, that meant we had to sit on the raised bit. But we were watching over the stage, and the drummer was the drummer in Rival Schools. He was filling in for the Movie Life, and I was just like, "Whoa, the drummer in Rival Schools is playing!" And he's the left-handed drummer playing on a right-handed kit. And so I was basically watching him, and my mate was a drummer too. So we were in our own band at the time, so we were just fascinated. And I just remember, that album, that time, that being the first proper gig I've been to, so that had to be on the list. And then it has to be a Bristol gig, seeing Horror at the Exchange a couple of years ago, because it was the sort of all the aesthetics and the visuals mixed with just the way that band are and sound, just quite intimidating, quite a big visual experience. And it was sort of something I hadn't experienced as much before with other bands I'd seen. So that brought a new sort of level to gig experience to me. And I'll end with. Sorry, guys.
Was that when they were playing with, and I can't remember his name, there's like a young guy on drums.
Yes.
Oh my god! And he's married to namesake Mike Vallely, the skateboarder's daughter. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Mike Vallely's much older than I thought he was. He must be like 50 or something. But
yeah, and his daughter's married to that guy. I don't know if he still plays drums in horror, but he's an insane drummer. He's got some clips up on YouTube and stuff of him covering like Dillinger Escape Plan, the Bronx and stuff. Yeah,
this all sounds right. Like I didn't know exactly who it was, but I remember someone talking about the drummer, and that was a sort of fairly big focal point of the evening. Of the set.
I'll have to talk about your top one, and I'm going to find out what that guy's name is. What's your?
My last one is going to be USA Nails at the Mother's Ruin, again a year or two ago.
Nice.
Because I've seen them play a lot, but there was something about that night, that particular set that they played, where it was late. It was at the end of an all-day festival thing of some sort. I think it was what was it? I've forgotten what it was called. But anyway, it was late at night. We were all pretty drunk, and I think the atmosphere. You know, a gig. A lot of the time with a good show, it is partly to do with the audience, and I think at that show, it felt just like the perfect time for USA Nails to play a set, and because they're one of those bands that you see them sometimes and it's okay, and then you see them other times and it just completely resonates and smashes. And this was that, and we walked out just completely gobsmacked. And I remember all of us were just like, because we weren't properly coherent, we were quite drunk, but we were like very much like, what just happened? What was so good about that? And no one could put their finger on it, and I've never had that experience before or since. So again, that one stood out to me as a unique one. So that's my top three.
yeah, I love that you said USA Nails, because they're friends of mine, and I've seen them God knows how many times. But I will always remember the first time I saw them, and it was when Future of the Left played Heaven. And I was going on my own. It was one of the only times I've gone to a gig on my own. And my friend was like, get there early, USA Nails are supporting.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, whatever. And I remember the same thing, even in that big room, I was just like completely blown away. And then, I've seen them from tiny rooms, pubs, to like massive rooms. And they always blow you away. They've got a great sense of humor as well. Like Stephen is a great front man. Actually, he used to play in a band called Kong, and they've just released loads of like old stuff today. And Kong were another great band.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely it. It's like, I think in between songs, I remember we played with them at High Brazil actually a good couple of years ago with a band called Pet Crow, and they were playing
Pet Crow,
really good, and they were playing with a band called Bo Grits, who are they're not really doing much at the moment, but so I was very stoked on that bill. And I just remember USA Nails. It was during the cold snap in 2018. I think it was it was sort of like a long evening, and then everyone's a bit sort of getting on the booze a bit just to stay warm, sort of thing. And I just remember their set at the end, because Stephen always had a beer in his hand, and it was basically just like a comedy set in between the songs, and it was just like all round entertainment. So I got to agree with that bit.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's a really, really good note to end on, I think, actually. So thanks for those stories, guys, and those were brilliant top threes, and I'm really glad you really thought about those, because those were brilliant. So obviously, just before we wrap up, other than the double single today, is there anything else you want to plug or say just before we drop off?
I don't know, Tom, have you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to sort of, with the lockdown and everything, one thing I've just noticed sort of lately in life is people are finding new ways to be creative without all being in the same room at the same place at time, which for us has been kind of like just figuring out as we go and stuff. But there's been all these other things like popping up, like this website called Isolate Create, which for people like me that enjoy music tech, for lack of a better way of putting it, they've just been uploading the stems to like loads of really great bands. So like one of my favorite bands, Slow Mass, have got some stems up there, La Dispute, Converge, lots of stuff. Yeah, exactly. Like loads of really great stuff up there that you can just access for free. And I don't think any of them are being too careful about copyright or anything. I think it's just like, everything's kind of up for grabs. Do what you want with it, like put some vocals on it, nick the stems and use it in your own track, like whatever. I think it's just really cool to see that like stuff like that is sort of cropping up at the moment. Even in like pop music, Charlie XCX released an Isolation album like last week or the week before, and already she has just released all of the stems to it, which is like pretty mad if you think historically how, you know, major labels and stuff are like really you know, careful about copyright and will sue anyone for anything. It's just cool, like stuff like that is kind of cropping up.
It's like Gold Key released an album during Isolation, and I don't know if 100% of it was recorded during Isolation, but I know a lot of it was. So that's another great example, and that will probably be in my top 10 of the year because it's such a bangers album. I totally agree with the
I think it's just like lots of cool stuff.
Yeah. Sorry, there was a delay again there right at the end.
The delay getting longer.
Yeah, I know. Thanks so much for coming on, guys, and spending the time today. And I hope the new songs get well received and you get lots of listens and buys on Bandcamp. Obviously, anyone listening, Bandcamp No Fees Day today. And just a little plug for myself is I'm actually selling these t-shirts, and there's a print on the back. And I'm donating £5 per t-shirt towards Black Minds Matters. So if anyone's watching today, do get on that. Thank you guys again, and we'll catch up soon, I hope.
Thanks, Adam. That was really fun. Just the questions were great, and it was thanks for having us on, man. We really appreciate it.
That's all right, man. Cool. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Bye.